Welcome to the 26th Annual Austin Film Festival. We're here with screenwriter Alex Tse. And Alex, I want to start with the fact that you're a Cali kid. How'd you end up at Emerson?
I don't think we have enough time. I really don't think we have enough time to explain it because it was a complete fluke. Just the short end of it, I was at a college fair and my mom was like, hey, look, Jay Leno went here. And we've been to Boston before and we like this place. And so she's the one who actually filled out my application. Yeah. Wow. And then I ended up there on a fluke. I really thought I was going to go to UCLA. Yeah.
Wow. Now you do obviously end up back in LA after that. I'd love to start with kind of how you got into writing. I think it's an interesting story. Before Sucker Free, before Spike, tell us a bit about your writing history before that. I think it's kind of interesting.
Honestly, I knew without knowing, like at probably around like 6 years old, because I would watch cartoons and read the comic books and kind of change things in my mind.
Yeah.
Or like this, why did that episode of G.I. Joe end this way? It should have ended this way. Like, why did Snake Eyes do that? He should have done that. And then I really was gravitating towards, comics, except I was a horrible artist, which you don't need to be, obviously, to write comics, I think, but back then I didn't really kind of completely grasp that. And I kind of felt like if I was going to do comics, I wanted to present what I was imagining visually as well, because if I could draw, I think that's where I would have ended up. To be honest with you. Yeah, that's where I would have ended up, but I didn't. But it always kind of, so from 6 on, I was always kind of creating stuff in my head. I think this first story that I actually wrote was a Sherlock Holmes story in 6th grade, which is funny because when I did script rewrites on the second Sherlock Holmes, that was part of me getting that job. They're like, well, what do you think of Sherlock Holmes? Because it's a little different than what I had been doing. I'm like, well, let me just tell you something. The Sherlock Holmes was the first short story I ever wrote, and I was like, oh, okay, so, and then just kind of getting to the point of understanding that this could be a real job. Right, so it was always kind of in me. It was something that interested me, but I thought, okay, so I like to write, so maybe I'll be a journalist. But then I was more interested in making shit up. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to know when did hip hop come into your life? Because I think the first kind of notion for other people to know about you was MTV Raps and kind of the success there. How does that translate from the comics into writing? For that, not genre, but writing for music, writing that type of, it's slightly different feel of writing, I feel like, for you.
Yeah.
Or was it?
Well, yes, no. I mean, because there's a lot of, and it's funny you bring that up because when you talk about the Wu-Tang Clan, you talk about really the first kind of like real hardcore rap group that would just throw a Tony Stark line in the verse, which made me connect to their music more. So there's always been a crossover audience between hip hop and comic books, and it's weird. I mean, it may have been regional, but it wasn't the stereotypical stigma of who should read comic books and who should be listening to hip hop was not like that in San Francisco. Like, cool, if you were cool, you were like, you knew what's up with the X-Men and you knew what was up with, Nas or something like that. There was no, there wasn't like, if you like, Souls of Mischief, you can't, because those guys love comic books too. I mean, that was another, that's a Bay Area group, Della Funky Homo Sapien, all those guys, they were into video game culture. And that's probably why someone like myself and that audience gravitated towards that music too, is because they were super into comic books as well and made all those same references and whatever. So it wasn't really as, I don't think it's ever been as segmented as some people think that audience is. It really isn't.
That's so cool. Yeah. And I love that it is kind of coming back right now for you and your writing with Wu-Tang, because I do feel like that's what we're seeing in the show, at least, is seeing that merging of it. I'd love to know the Sucker Free, how that came about, getting to work with Spike, and then also the recognition of awards. You started to get really recognized for your work from that.
Oh, yeah, thanks, man. So that was when I was first starting out, which is funny because the first 2 jobs I was ever hired for was in the same month, and that was Superfly, which just came out last year, and it was Sucker Free City. And Sucker Free City came about because I had written a script. The script that kind of broke me into Hollywood was a script called 87 Fleer, which still hasn't been made. I'm attached to direct it, but it's a smaller movie. I was really surprised at the response because it was just kind of a movie sort of loosely based on how I grew up in San Francisco that I really didn't think people would get. And everyone, from all different walks of life within Hollywood would, when they would meet me, they would talk about, something from their childhood that they connected to, even though I felt like my childhood was pretty specific. But that just goes to show you that if you're being kind of truthful with your experience, that people will see something of themselves in it. And so I wrote this script loosely based about me growing up in my neighborhood in San Francisco. Showtime had read it, and they just kind of said, we've been really interested in doing a show on gangs. Are you interested in that? And that was it. They didn't give me any parameters.
Really?
No, other than that, they liked the idea because in my, they liked it being multi-ethnic because the script I wrote was multi-ethnic, and they liked that. But besides that, there were no other parameters. I think it was based on coincidence because on that script, 87 Fleer, Spike's company was attached. So I had already had a relationship there. I don't know if they knew that or not, because they had, and maybe they did because their Showtime was the one that suggested the partnership, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. And then I just went about. I originally didn't actually want to write a show about gangs in San Francisco, because I kind of thought I did. Not that the script 87 Fleer had to do with gangs, but it was street culture, and I just kind of thought I did that. And then the more I thought about it, because I was thinking, well, maybe I'll do something in Boston. But the more I thought about it, it's like, part of also the reason why I had written that script, 87 Fleer, is because it also kind of represented a segment of San Francisco that you never saw, right? Being from San Francisco, it's like I was just very accustomed to seeing my city being used as a backdrop. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's just idea decorative. It's like, hey, let's blow up the Golden Gate Bridge for the 100th time in a movie, and it's sort of like, but the city has so much character and there's so much going on in it. It's never been really showed. Honestly, I don't think that at least anything that I had seen or I really recalled. So it just kind of made me think, well, at the time, not that this is a proud thing to say, that we had the lowest homicide closure rate in the country. Do you know what I mean? And then people didn't know that there was a lot of kind of gang stuff there going on in San Francisco. So I just was like, let's explore that. Yeah,
it's good. Yeah, I mean, to get that word out like that.
Yeah,
it's you brought up Superfly and it taking forever to get done. You weren't setting out to rewrite the original. You were trying to do something, I think it was titled Gangland. It had a little separate look to
it. That's another story that could take hours. Where originally, again, that was the first film job I ever got. I got the job based on a take that was more true to the original. Almost immediately. And I say immediately, like the week that I got that job, based on what I had pitched, I had heard that Joel Silver, the producer, just wanted to do something completely different. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's cool I got a job, but it sounds like I'm not going to write the movie that I thought I was going to write. And then so I kind of walked in, and he's just like, I think this is the first time I met him. And I love Joel. There was no hello. It was just like, Puff Daddy King Lear, and I was just like, what? Yeah. And he's like, he wanted to do it, King Lear, in hip hop, and I was just like, okay, I know King Lear, and I think I can wrap my head around it. That's interesting. But I just said, so this doesn't really have anything to do with Superfly, does it? We're just going to use the title. And he's like, yes. And so at a certain point, because it really didn't have anything to do with Superfly, we just, we're calling it something else. It was called Gangland. There was a point where we were going to set it in Houston, and I had spent Many Days with Pharrell. That would have been interesting. That was going to be called, I think I called it like H Crown or something like that. And then, it just, and it's a credit to Joel's tenaciousness. He, where many times I would have thought like, again, that's the first film job I ever got hired for, probably 2002. Do you know what I mean? I just thought it would die. And he kept bringing it back to life until eventually became what was released. And that in itself was also an insane story of how, from the green light to production, I don't think you will ever see that again in possibly history.
Wow.
In terms of
and
like
that's
how
just
fast
Joel's tenacity, wanting
his
to
tenacity,
get it done.
yeah. And then on the studio standpoint, it was just they needed a movie in a certain release date, and then it just got greenlit. I think we started filming in January or February, and then the movie came out in like May. I mean, that's just not normal.
Yeah.
That is beyond not normal.
Yeah.
It's almost amazing that it was pulled off.
So I'm sure this next question then is going to be another one that could go on for hours, but diving into the world of Alan Moore seems like anyone who ever's tried it, anyone who's ever done it, there's millions of stories about how tough it is to capture his work, but also the fact that he's not a big fan of it being done, so he's not really involved. But tell me a bit about the Watchmen movie, getting to work with David on that script and honing that in, and then getting to see it come to fruition. Because even though Alan may not like it, I think a lot of comic book fans of Watchmen, of all of the remakes, I think that's the one that actually is pretty close to what you experience in the comics. Granted, the ending's a little bit different for Zach's side, but there's so much that is straight from the comics. I feel like, as someone who loved comics, that must have been a wonderful project for you to tackle.
Yeah, that one's more interesting because that wasn't probably as hard on me that one would think, because all the heartbreak, so much of the heartbreak came before I arrived, and I was fortunate enough to come. They were engaging me a little bit before they engaged Zach, and before Zach officially came on, him and I had a conversation. But Zach had just come off 300, so he had an incredible amount of currency, and he could protect the project on so many levels. And I actually disagree in a lot of ways. In certain Alan Moore projects, to me, are not hard to translate because it's like that. I don't need to do that much because it should be that. It should be that on the page because that's brilliant, and I'm not going to beat that, and I shouldn't try to beat that. And all I should be doing is protecting that. And that's why when I talk about I don't really consider that I was a co-writer of Watchmen. I was like a co-protector, regardless of what Alan thinks. I felt like I was a co-protector of the work. I don't know if we even want to get into what some of the suggestions were from the powers that be of what it could have been, which are crazy, really crazy, which is fine, because it's a dense work and it was an incredible risk. But I just looked at it as like, no, this is something we have to protect, and Zach felt the same way. Having Dave's involvement and his approval, knowing where Alan comes from was still it was an incredible experience, but it wasn't as tough as it was for me coming in at the point that I came in. I remember the first draft of the script was written when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
I wasn't even in high school when the first draft of the script was written. So there was a lot of work and a lot of heartbreak and a lot of pushing that boulder up the hill before I ever got in. And it's just one of those things where it was time and place, everything seemed to align. You had a director that was also a huge fan of the graphic novel, who had a lot of current, who just made the studio $500 million, and so he could make some of the creative decisions that were needed to have that movie be what it was. And my preferred cut, my favorite cut of that is actually Zach's, not the ultimate cut, but the director's cut. That's
definitely.
the one. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that you're proud of it, because I think there are a lot of people that look at that before when you guys attach to I mean, they were crushed when it didn't come out to be what people wanted in the original. It took forever to get made, and then you guys come in and you guys get it out there at least. How hard is it to be attached to different work and maybe not see it come to fruition, or it's taken, Superfly took forever. I think like you've been attached to the Crow story for a long time.
Yeah, not now. Yeah, that was me working with a specific director.
Yeah, I mean, is it hard to see something die off when you're asked to do it, or do you just let the work, you try out the work, and whatever happens?
Yeah, I think that's helped me. I think that's just part of my personality. Like I just worry about the things I can control, which is when I'm first. I mean, I think what hasn't happened to me, which would be probably super harder for me to deal with than maybe some of the stuff I've been involved with, is if I had come up, if like let's say the script on 87 Fleer, someone had taken that, which is like.
It's your baby.
Yeah, and also a reflection of personal shit. And then I'm not involved in that. Then I think that would be different than obviously there are properties that I was in love with that were important to me, Phantom Tollbooth, all those things. But I also don't have any illusions of how that system works. Having a break as a writer, working within the system, as an assistant, and seeing how the machinery works. So, I accept, at least in the feature world, of, okay, when I'm on a project, my job is to do a script that's good enough and gets us a director, right? That's job number one. Do you know what I'm saying? And then after that, it's sort of like working with the director, and, it is what it is. I mean, like, I can only control the writing part of it when it's a feature film. And so that's all that I worry about, and I don't really kind of agonize over things that I have no control over, because you lose your mind.
Yeah. So tell me about Wu-Tang, getting to work with, I mean, one side Hulu, but one side RZA and the actual members. I mean, this seems like a dream project. It seems like a project that worked and has come to fruition kind of nicely. It's not like the other projects. This seems so much fun and fresh for you.
Yeah, I mean, that was interesting. Obviously, gigantic Wu-Tang fan. And I had a general meeting at Imagine, who at the time the head of Imagine television was Francie Calfo. She brought me in, and then I just thought we were just meeting generally, and then she was like, have you ever kind of look based on her writing, you might be a fan of the Wu-Tang Clan? And I was like, well, that's brilliant detective work by you, because yes, I am. And they said, well, we want to do a show about them. Would you like to meet RZA? And I was like, sure, what I mean? Which is important, because you don't, now I consider myself a Wu-Tang nerd. Like I've read tons of the interviews. I'm like, just in hip hop in general, like I'm the dude that was reading the liner notes and knowing who the engineer was on this track and that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean there's a TV show, right? We weren't talking a movie. It doesn't mean that there's a TV show. So when I met with RZA, and obviously we don't know each other, so he's not going to just download everything. But he told me just a couple things. I'm like, yeah, there's a TV show here, because I was like, because you make the assumption 9 dudes in a group. Okay, these are just guys that were friends and decided they're going to form a rap group together. And then when he was like, yeah, no, we weren't really friends at all. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? And that was surprising as someone who's followed the group for as long as I have. And I was like, yeah, there's a story here. And then it was just about, the first part was, I guess he liked me in the meeting, and then they were like, so just to know, if you move forward, it'll be a co-create, co-write, which I'd really never done before. But, I would say this, I just said, okay, well, let's just see how he seems like, a good guy, you know what I mean? And he seems to, in his experience as a director, writer, actor, composer, like, understands the Hollywood stuff, do you know what I mean? So let's just see how it goes, and if the worst comes to worst, I'll just quit, right? You know what I mean? And it was better than I could have imagined, but it took time, because we're both working on other stuff, and we had to kind of be comfortable with each other, and he had to be comfortable sharing. That's not going to happen overnight. Sharing very personal things. So that was probably probably spent a year and a half to 2 years together.
Wow.
Yeah, just, he was shooting a movie. I only.
Would you say like 2015, 2016 is when this is all?
Yeah, I would say it's possible we met at the end of 2015, which might have been the first time, but it might have been the beginning of 2016. But yeah, and so we would just kind of meet periodically, hang out, talk about just his life, some stories about the other guys, and then we might talk about the story itself. But once there was more, I got to know more of the story, then we could actually really start to shape it. What the series would look like, what season 1 would look like, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
As far as being that co-creator, influence-wise, how much do you get to? Like, I think the casting choices are amazing, the people you found to connect with, the characters, but, where you guys shoot, is there anything that you're getting to do that you've never been able to do that you just love a part of the show?
Oh, yeah, because me and Riz are co-showrunners, so
yeah.
That's very different, right? Having, now I had run a writer's room just prior, having that experience for television, and having that experience right before Wu-Tang was also helpful, in terms of how we ran the writer's room. But obviously very different from features. I mean, there have been times where in features, they might look to my voice a little bit more than some other people's, but at the end of the day, the features is a director's medium, and, at the end of the day, I can say what I have to say. I can make I can present as many arguments I can for what it is, but the director, sometimes for good reason and sometimes for not a good reason, they want to make a choice, and you can go along with the choice or quit. That's the feature film business, and you're looked at as a little bit more disposable. A lot more disposable, which is not the TV business. In the TV business, they look at you to, they're not just investing in your idea, your writing ability, they're investing in you to carry it. So all those decisions were made by myself and Riza. I mean, obviously, there's budget and practical considerants to make, but for creatively, it was us. Do you know what I mean? And, that's why that's definitely the hardest job I've ever had, but also creatively the most satisfying. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's really work you could stand by.
Well, it's working. I mean, I enjoyed it. So
thank you. I appreciate that, man.
I thought it was spot on. And then I'm kind of curious. There's also been documentaries now about Wu-Tang that have all come out. The Wu-Tang is, I don't want to say hot. They've always been hot. But, like, specifically right now, people diving into the history of it is extremely important. And also with like hip hop evolution and stuff like that. Is it fun to see those projects come? Because I think it helps your show in a way, like, because it's people are more aware of that material. Or do you kind of like, no, we should be the ones that telling the story? I mean,
no, I'm into it. I think and maybe it's coinciding now in terms of the hip hop thing because. In the environment we live in now, there's a reason why I like a lot of young people make hip hop because they can. It's easier to make. You can make it on your laptop. I mean that's why hip hop is like so super mainstream now, right? Because people can just upload that stuff on SoundCloud. It's a way for young people to express themselves musically with the least barriers of entry, and so therefore I think that there is more hip-hop programming that is behind the curtain scenes of seeing these artists and seeing past artists. I think there's a reason why that stuff is resonating a lot more, not just for people who have grown up in the culture and looking back in memory lane, but for younger kids who are part of the culture and wanting to know more and seeing all that stuff.
Is there a moment in the show or a sequence in the show that you're like, God, I'm so glad we got that put up there? Like, that's exactly what we were trying to accomplish. Like, are there moments where you're just like, I get this whole creative process, like, this is what I wanted to do? Like, is it is it translated on the screen for you as much as, I mean, I'm not attached, but I feel like I've connected with certain parts of the show. How much of that is reflected on you?
Well, I would say reflected on both of us, obviously, because we're partners. But seeing the animation sequence in episode 2, which we wanted to do as kind of like an R. Crumb homage,
which was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was. Now that one, it was something I pitched to Riza. I said, look, I think we should do this. Here are the reasons why I think we should do this, and here's the reasons why I think it's consistent with your taste in Wu-Tang. And it was gratifying because it was spot on, because he was referencing Ralph Bakshi movies that I hadn't even seen. He's like, well, you never seen Coonskin? I was like, what? And we actually talked to him.
Wow.
Yeah, we actually called because we were like, maybe he could do it. You know what I mean? But he's old, and we really were into him actually playing a role in some way. But at the end of the day, I just don't think he felt like he could do it. But that in itself was cool, and the way that turned out, super happy and proud of that. The kung fu stuff in 9, which is super personal to me, that was that's another hours long discussion of how we ended up doing that episode. But the way that's landed, and the way the whole intent of it, I'm very proud of that. Yeah,
it looks real. It's not. I thought fluid would be the word. It's so fluid when that episode. I love that part of it.
Yeah.
As far as the future of the show, can you give us any hints towards anything like that, or?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing with streamers. They have data. They'll give you hints, but they don't share it with you.
Yeah.
Which I understand, but also it's sort of it can be frustrating because it's not like when you have a TV show on a network and you can have evidence of what the ratings are and all that stuff, and you can sort of come with some stronger arguments, but they have all the information, right? So as of right now, I don't know what's going to happen. I know they seem to be very happy in certain metrics, so we'll just wait and see. Again, I'm not, because I'm happy with how it all turned out, and we stand by the work. I have no control that. I accept what it is, and we're very proud of what we've done, and whatever happens.
Have you been impressed by the social media reaction? The fan base seems strong.
Yeah, it does seem like I'm actually not on social media, but I do have fun. I'll go look at the I'll look at the Twitter feeds, and then those are always very, very enjoyable. It's good. If I've got 5 minutes between things, it's a good distraction.
And to kind of wrap things up, I'd love to know kind of what you're working on is on the writing side, on the creative side. Are you touching base with Showtime or HBO or anyone like that, or different networks about work? I mean, what's down the pipeline for you?
Not sure. I mean, because it's only been a few weeks since we actually finalized the season finale. Mm-hmm. I have been approached with a lot of stuff, to be honest, but it's challenging because I'm essentially in a holding pattern if we go again, because anything that I take would be in second position, and then once Wu-Tang, if it goes again, that will dominate my life.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that I'm not writing, but one thing in particular I'm not writing that I'm producing that I'm super excited about, which we'll try and go out and sell or pitch, I think fairly soon, but it's got Chiwetel Ejiofor attached. So I'm really excited about that.
Wow.
It's called Kata, and we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I talked to him a couple weeks ago about the cop procedure movie that he just had. Yeah, he's wonderful. Such a nice guy.
He's super nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very base, very religious guy. I like that about
Spiritual,
him.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, thank you for the time. I hope Wu-Tang does come back. I love that you would embrace being a showrunner again in creative process. Like, some people shy away from that, but the fact you've tackled that, thank you, because the show works. Yeah, please come back. I think
cool,
the
man.
fans would love that.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And welcome to Austin. It's a pleasure to have you here in AFF.
All right, cool, man. I'm about to go eat some barbecue now, man.